Simmons.
Here.
Councilmember Fisher.
Here.
Councilmember Knight.
Here.
Councilmember Michelle.
Present.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Chow.
Yes.
Mayor Theo.
Here. Item C is approval of the meeting minutes. We have three sets of meeting minutes to approve this evening. The city council work session on March 24th, the city council work session on March 26th, and the regular city council meeting on March 26th. Move those. Moved by Smith. Thank you. Second by Knight. Thank you. Mr. Smith, any comments this evening?
Yes, on the regular, page 6, under Michelle's report, number 2, under the third bullet, the last sentence, the second founding at Oxford, it just didn't read clearly.
I think I should say, I will follow up on them after that.
You know, we got
That's current. Or with it,
this wasn't real clear.
could leave on them out and stuff with them,
Yeah. Just something to clear that up. And then on page 8, L2, number 6.
Before you go there, do you want to say the city received questions on what the tap fees are, how they were derived, and the history of tap fees, or something like that? Because that's essentially what it was.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine.
Just instead of or something, discussion. If you want to change it, let's change it to something. Sorry.
Page 8, 2, and then item number 6 in the conditions. Maximum sleeping room occupancy shall not exceed 7 persons. That's incorrect. Maximum occupancy for the structure.
That's what was changed. No, it was changed to that.
You're not gonna have allow 7 people in any one of those bedrooms.
No. Total sleeping capacity.
It doesn't say that. It says maximum sleeping room occupancy shall not exceed 7 persons.
That's exactly how it was worded.
Well, that's.
It was, occupancy was taken out. Sleeping rooms is 3. Occupancy is associated with the number 7.
Right.
That was the clarification that was made for the motion.
Right, see, number 5 is the maximum number of sleeping rooms shall not exceed 3, but the maximum people occupying the structure should be 7.
But it was said that that doesn't count, it's only the number of people that are sleeping there though, because if you had a party and had 20 people there, you could have more, but they just couldn't sleep. So that was why I think the sleeping was added. So
Yes.
it could just be,
It was,
Change
I
the
think
wording.
it was added because maximum occupancy only sounded like you could
Right.
only have 7 people in the house.
ever.
Ever.
Right.
So that's exactly how the wording was, sleeping room occupancy.
Well,
That's
I
exactly
don't,
how.
I think
And it was
we need to
agreed on.
reword that somehow because,
Could you
Yeah.
change it to something about maximum occupancy, room occupancy for sleeping? 7. So we say, oh, we have 7 people, and that's it. But that's not.
but see, it sounds like you're talking
It's
about
required
a
number.
particular room.
Out
And
of it.
you don't want 7
Yeah, that-
associated with just
Well,
one
Bill.
each bedroom.
They've got a problem here with words.
Okay, Martha.
Because, Mr. Smith, I think because it does not say maximum sleeping room occupancy shall not exceed 7 persons per room, it's the total occupancy, not per room.
So what would the harm be in saying the total sleeping room occupancy shall not exceed 7 persons? Nothing?
The way it is.
Is that acceptable? I don't know that that's different than what it says, Jim, but if the words mean something different,
Yeah, because
Zach, jump in.
adding the, the total for the 3 bedrooms can't exceed 7. This
So you want to say the total maximum sleeping room occupancy for all 3 bedrooms should not exceed 7 persons?
For the 3 bedrooms combined.
Okay.
Because the idea is, you're not saying, you're limiting it to 7 for each bedroom.
That's, okay.
The thing we have to remember is, one would need to do a new motion in order to do that.
I know.
2, occupancy, per the way we've set up the text amendment, is predicated on the International Property Maintenance Code. And some rooms may not allow 7. It may be even less.
Right.
So it's not, I don't think it's anything that you have to worry about.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Anything else, Jim?
No.
Ms. Knight? Other council members, comments on the minutes or suggested changes? Okay, so we just have the one on, under I2 reports. Okay. Taking that as a friendly amendment from both of you. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes with the correction signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have no prearranged participation this evening, so we're down to approval of the agenda. And I would just like to ask a question, whether we need the closed session or not.
No. I think it's updated on the session.
Okay, so if the maker could take that into account, please.
I'll move you approve the agenda as amended to remove closed session.
I would like to add some amendments to the agenda.
Let me ask if there's a support for the first motion first.
Okay.
Support. Support by Smith. Okay, discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add 3 amendments to the agenda. I'd like to amend O, closed session, to include discussion about potential purchase of property. I would like to add, under L, new business. After LB, I'd like to add a motion for the city to build a new fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station. And I'd like to add a 3rd amendment, new business, under new business number 2, proposal from Partners in Architecture, move L2 to follow the previously had motion.
Okay, so let me just make sure, you're asking for a friendly amendment. The first friendly amendment is that you want to change the closed session from dealing with pending litigation to purchase of
Potential
property,
purchase of
discussion of
property,
purchase of property. The second amendment is, okay, you're passing these out, this is helpful, thank you. You got one, Courtney? Oh, wait, send one back, please, so the city manager can see what. Everybody has one? The second amendment is to add the following motion after L8. Hold on a sec, okay. Motion for the city to build a new fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station, okay? And then,
So we're gonna make that
okay,
L9.
then you want
So it's considered-
move L2 to after, okay, to follow that one,
Yes.
to follow the new L8. Okay, I think I understand that. So let me ask you first of all, are those acceptable to Ms. Fisher and Mr. Smith?
I'm going to,
Well, if they're not, then they're not friendly amendments.
that's right.
And we'll
I
vote,
wasn't
we'll vote on,
here.
is there support? Okay,
I
then,
was
all
here
right.
last meeting, I just would like to just withdraw my motion. Can I do that?
You can?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so then we'll go with your motion as the prime motion then,
Okay.
to amend the agenda to include what's been passed out, the 3 amendments. Is there support? Support by Cousins, okay? Do you understand what's going on?
Yeah. And I'm including that number 2 as L9. That's how I would
Correct.
put that in there. And then we just read.
And L2,
It just comes right
moves
down, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
move
that's-
L2 to
I
that.
got it.
How, what exactly then is 9, how does 9 read? That there's to consider a motion to build, or if you want this particular motion, what?
Well, I think L9 is just, a new fire station. That's, and then the motion itself will come out of that. think we just gotta briefly say that, right? I don't think I have to put the details as to what the vote. This is the way as we follow it here, right?
Excuse me, what, Donna, what don't you understand
Well,
about what?
it says motion for city to build, so I'm assuming that there's some kind of formal motion someplace that's gonna be put here. Usually we have consideration of motion to do blah
Yeah,
or whatever.
what?
So I'm just trying to figure out
what-
what that is.
I think what they're trying to add is new business item L9, which is a consideration of
Mhm.
a motion for the city to build a new fire station
Okay.
within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Is that correct, Ms. Knight?
That's correct, thank you.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, does everybody understand? We have motion by Knight, second by Cousins, to amend the agenda to include these three items. Everybody clear on what we're doing? Any discussion on that? I'm going to just make the comment that this is a continuation of a game we've played before, which is to add something to the agenda late without it being in the public packet. It's happened before. I understand what's being added, but we should give the public the courtesy of having these things in the packet ahead of time when we're talking about something as significant as that. And council members continue to bring this forward in this manner, and I don't understand why. It's not courtesy to the public. So, anybody else have anything to say on this? Or should I call the vote to approve it?
I don't like that stuff in the last minute either, so.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda as approved, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Nay. Okay, so 5-2, we have an agenda, which is good. Okay. You can do it however, whatever your preference is. You can identify if you want. Okay, we're down to item F, which is public hearings. We have a public hearing this evening on the topic of changing the city elections from odd years to even years. So I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:16?
7:13.
7:13. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there anyone in the public that would, or in the audience who would like to speak this evening in front of the public? Please step to the podium if you would, please. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. You're supposed to ask my name and address?
Please give your name. Please state, I figured after all these years you do, but please state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is John Hanson, and I live at 7880 Fifth Street in the historic old home in the heart of historic Dexter Street. What I'd like to do by way of the hearing here is to read a letter into the record that is the letter that was sent to the council in December. And so the clerk doesn't have to get too excited to have a copy for her. And I do this really for the benefit of the community and the mainstream media here present. This letter is dated December 4th, 2017. 4 years ago, when the Dexter Charter Commission was developing draft language for the new City of Dexter Charter, it was our clear recommendation that the city use even-year elections for council and mayor. The reasons were simple. We are already on an even-year schedule. The turnout is better in even-year elections. The recent election at that time before council was a 30% turnout, which actually is pretty stunning for an off election for a small thing like that. Whereas last year's general election, the turnout was in the 60-70% range, so double the turnout in an even-year election. Cost is also a factor if there are no other issues on the ballot. Our legal counsel at the time informed us that we were required by law to specify odd-year elections. In fact, the proposed charter submitted by Jonesville at about the time we were doing ours was rejected by the state for specifying even-year elections. It turns out the advice of the legal counsel was correct, but incomplete. We were required to include odd-year elections in the charter, but the new city council could then switch to even-year elections by resolution, if they so desired. This option is clearly spelled out in law. If we had all this information back then, we would have complied with the law for odd-year elections, but simultaneously, at the same time, issued a recommendation that the new council resolve to switch to even-year elections as soon as they could do that. The switch will require some adjustments. In fact, you've been through that historically. Since all current council members and the mayor have now been elected for 4-year terms that expire in odd years. No doubt there's some process specified for this transition, and we can just look to Ann Arbor, who recently is going through a similar adjustment. We know that as a charter commission, we no longer exist and we have no authority. The people voted us out of office when they voted the charter in. So the recommendation to switch to even year elections is just that. It is a recommendation. But the recommendation comes with the unanimous support of the group of citizens who were elected to make such proposals. Jack Donaldson, a valued member of our group, has passed away, so there are only 8 of us now who join in urging you to consider this issue. And the letter is signed by John Hanson as the former chairman and by the other survivors of the Charter Commission: Phil Arbor, Matt Kowalski, Phil Meckus, Mary Ellen Miller, Tom Phillips, Michael Rates, Jim Smith, and 3 of whom are here present this evening: Jim Smith and Phil Arbor and Michael Rates. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this evening as part of the public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at
7:17.
7:17. Thank you. And we have shown a council discussion on the agenda. Does council want this to be a formal action item at the next meeting? Does council still think it's a good idea? There was some, I think, positive sentiment as part of the previous discussions before we decided to have the public hearing, learning about the process.
I'd just like to see it on, say, the next meeting's agenda.
Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Well, if you could make that for next agenda, appreciate it. First meeting in May. Or I'm sorry, second meeting in April. I'm ahead of myself. Okay. All good. Any further discussion on that, or can we move on to non-arranged? Okay, we're down to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak this evening? Any topic? Okay. There's another one at the end, if you stick around. Communications is up next. There were 2 communications in the packet: our upcoming meeting list and our sign calendar. Any comments or questions from council on those? Seeing none, we'll move down to our first report this evening from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, council.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about everybody else?
Good.
In your packet, I have my two-week written report for water, wastewater, and Department of Public Works. Also, I have a couple updates on the new filter that's going in down at the treatment plant, and then work's going to be done this week on the generator, and then a meeting with NEPCO. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start with questions on my report, please.
Mr. Tell?
How are we doing with that test well that opened up there at NBD? You know, when they got the metal plate over it?
Oh, we're still working through the process with
They're
the
just
help.
waiting for the state to come and
Still
do
waiting
it.
for the state?
Yeah, so they need to do a test to see if there's anything,
What
any
was waiting
reason
for
to keep it
2 weeks
open.
ago?
Yeah,
Was
but,
it?
I mean, it went on a list, you know, I mean,
Oh.
it could be
Yeah, they're checking it
a
twice.
while.
Alrighty.
No, plate's there for more than 10 years, it's historic, we have to leave it. So,
10 maybe.
I hope
No,
it's not that long.
Yeah, she thought it would be reasonable.
I just walked across it every day.
Dan, you may have indicated this earlier. Where are we doing, we're planning to do tree removal?
Tree removal,
I saw that you took Gino around for tree removal pricing.
I was off last week, so I wasn't part of that. I went on vacation, so I'm sure Courtney might be able to help a little bit.
Well, Kurt always has trees that are dead that he removes every year, so I can't tell you exactly where all of them are, unless
Just curious.
Michelle can, but.
A lot of them had to do with trees that we're replacing as part of our annual tree replacement program. Some of them were, there were a few others, a couple along the alley behind Grand Street. A resident had one of them checked and they're dead. One is on her property, one is on the city's property. There's one at the corner of Baker and Forest, if I remember correctly, and another tree on Ann Arbor Street, so. And Cushing Court was the other one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions on Dan's report? Do you have any updates, Dan?
Yes, last Thursday, Artesian and Pioneer came in and they started work on demo on the new filter, or the old filter, the 1977 filter down at the iron removal plant. They started on that Thursday. Late Thursday, our new filter arrived on a semi and we offloaded that. And then that Friday, the next day, we had the Nelson tank come in. They're going to do our inspections through this process, and they inspected all the welding and all the paint on the inside and the outside of the tank, and everything looks good. Over the next 3 weeks, we're hoping to have the old filter out, the new filter in, all the plumbing done, the media put in, but it's going to take, we're guessing, around three more weeks, a little over 3 weeks to get that done. After we get that done, we get the old filter out, we get the new filter in, the plumbing done, the media in, then we'll go ahead and we'll chlorinate it, and then we'll get 2 consecutive back T samples from the new filter, and we're hoping to put it back in service around April 30th. With this new filter arriving, we started flushing hydrants early this year, a lot earlier than we usually do. We got the majority of town done, but what we found was starting so early is it was cold in the mornings. We had to wait till 9, 10, 11 o'clock. The temperature got up high enough that when we were flushing on the roads, it didn't freeze immediately. So we ended up not getting Cedars or Westridge done, but we're looking at 2 or 3 days. So we're hoping by mid-May that we can get back out to Cedars after the new filter's up in service and running, and get back out and finish up hydrants then. Any questions?
None from me. Council? Thank you very much.
The backup generator on Ryan Drive, Gentech's gonna be coming in Wednesday, Thursday this week, working on making the repairs there. We're hoping Friday to have that back in service.
Great, that's great.
And also, I scheduled a meeting with NEPCO, with Mr. Grant, to go over the new permit that we had given him, and also go over the sampling procedures that we have NEPCO doing. And that'll be Thursday about 9:30. And also attached to that now, they want to put a new piece of equipment in their pretreatment, solid separator, so we'll also be going over that after the meeting about the permit and the sampling. Any questions?
All set. Anything else?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you for your report. Next up this evening is our Community Development Manager. Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening, Council. How are you this evening?
Good.
Excellent. So you've got my report in front of you, and before I go into the updates, do you have any questions, or is there anything that you want to talk about on my report? And you do have in front of you the information that goes along with item number 6, the Hafner landscape screen.
So I have a question on that.
Yep, go ahead.
Obviously, we committed to doing a landscape plan there. I guess, is there any thought in getting another friendly bid or a second or third friendly bid from other local people?
We can. The reason we just went with Superior is that's how we've always done it in the past. We've just used whoever our contractor was. But if council would like a bid from someone else, we can do that.
Well, we've used that for tree removal in the right of way, not necessarily for creating landscape beds, right?
Well, anytime we have any additional planting, but you're right, we haven't done landscape beds that I'm aware of in my tenure here. But we have when we were using Ann Arbor landscaping.
I mean, this may very well be the best price, I don't know.
Right, no, I understand.
I'm just asking.
I understand.
Sorry, Ms. Fisher?
Were you surprised at this?
I'm sorry?
Were you surprised this was so low or so high, or that this is about right?
What I was surprised at was the thoroughness. They are very responsive when you explain what it is you want to do. They met us on site. We walked the site, they measured the site. Dan had mentioned that in certain areas, for instance, that berm area, to put trees in there, that's not just soil, that's not just virgin soil. It is compromised, not environmentally. It's compromised with millings and, what was the other thing?
Well, not only that, up farther was the old DPW road, so it's all limestone, gravel, and millings.
Right.
You know, so.
So there's a certain amount of preparation that has to
So a
be
little
done.
bit out of the ordinary.
It is out of the ordinary, it's not just, digging a hole and putting in a tree
And
or a
this is us
shrub.
saying that we believe that we need to make this fence. We think this is the responsible thing to do.
In order to ensure
our
that the
agreement.
trees will survive. And the life
To
safety
meet our
will-
agreement with them.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other council questions on Michelle's report? Michelle, any updates?
Yep,
Anything else?
so let me find my little sheet here. So, the Grandview Commons, we had the pre-con last Thursday. So they have got their zoning compliance, we have all permits in, all escrows, performance bonds, et cetera. And one of the things that Mr. Brower had identified is that he's going to be taking down the remainder of the industrial building as well as the house on 7961 Grand. He'll be taking those down, or wishes to take those down in May. Excuse me. So he'll have to do another zoning compliance for the demo and get that from the building department. So right now what he's working on is the utility disconnections. And once he's got all that taken care
So
of,
the whole thing's completed,
the whole thing's coming down. So
That's great news, all right?
it is.
Marvelous, I can't imagine having some of those houses there with that thing stick there, but I think that's why he's moving his part, but
You're not gonna miss it?
Lord, do I know. At least, I don't want that I know, that he's got out of here. Yeah.
So he has also asked that the city reach out to the property owner of the house that immediately abuts the southern property line where the duplexes will be, because that house is well, the yard especially is in pretty bad shape. Excuse me. Pardon me. So, taken some pictures. I have had a conversation with the people who own the property. I've got the supervisor's name, and we'll send out a letter and ask them to clean up the site.
It's bank owned.
It's bank owned, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all the news on Grandview. We had a meeting this morning with a potential, another brewery. It's a rather unique one, beer and tea they make, so.
Beer and tea?
Beer and tea.
That's what I thought you said.
So,
Like bottled tea blends and that sort of thing?
Mhm.
Okay.
So they are looking at the property out on Joy Road, the 7275 Joy Road. Excuse me, not taking the entire building, but a portion of it. And so we went over what are the things that he needs to be considering that he's not currently having to consider right now, because he is such a small production, has small production levels in this current facility. So we've made some contacts. We're going to connect him with Michigan Department of Agriculture. The key to note in this one may be a little bit easier for the business, because that particular location is eligible for MDARD and USDA assistance, whereas our industrial park was not. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what happens.
You have an estimate of a biosolids going to be?
No, we talked with him about
That's going to be my number one
sampling.
thing. I don't
Yep.
really care about anything else.
Yep, they have to do sampling.
If I can't bring it into my system, why would I?
Absolutely, and we can't make any,
We
and
recorded a meeting about F&B, we had a representative from F&B there.
I mean, I don't want to build their,
Sanitary survey
float their
first.
boat and then tell them, hey.
Sanitary survey first, and then we go into the sampling and see what they got. You know, what-
So they're
what-
pretty small right now, they're looking at
Very
double,
small.
triple, quadruple expansion in the next 10 years?
possibly 2,000 barrels in the first year, then 4,000, and then after that, quite a big expansion. They're talking
So they would
about-
be eligible for Cambrian system also?
Depending on what their waste stream is, they may have to do something like that.
I think they need to be aware of that, maybe
Oh, we
even
made
put it
them
in their
aware of that.
CIP.
We made
Yeah,
them aware
we
of
made them
everything
aware.
that we've learned over the past,
We've learned a lot.
to the
Yes, we
letter, to
have.
the letter.
Yes.
All right.
It was eye-opening at some points.
Is that the old Thompson Shore building?
Yep. And that's it. Unless there's anything else you have a question for me.
Council questions? All set, thank you, Michelle.
Oh, enjoy your handouts from the Smart Cities Symposium. It was
That's this year?
amazing. Yes. They will be providing the PowerPoint, and I would like to arrange that you see them, at least one of them, the demographics one. It literally was jaw-dropping. I sat there through the whole thing, just the information that came out of it was unbelievable.
Projection for the future?
Not so much a projection for a future, but giving you a quick snippet in time of what, how can I put it? What things were like X number of years ago and where we are today. And one of the ones that sticks out in my mind is the year in which Facebook started and how many users they had, which was, what, 50,000, I think it was the number, and what their users are now.
I hear they're falling.
Well, that could be, discounting what's going on presently, but they're in the billions, and when added all together, they would constitute, the population of people using it would constitute the third largest country in the world.
I'm just wondering if they had any foresight into the future of alternative transportation.
That was what this whole symposium was about.
Am I wasting my time building parking lots when in 30 years from now, everybody's just gonna get on
It's still,
jets and
that's still a good,
elevators?
it's a good question, and the answers aren't done yet. But it was enlightening.
I hate building parking lots, well.
That
Your employer doesn't.
by
Just my employer.
2025, I'll have to remember the timeline. By 2025, you could start to see the autonomous vehicles. Before that, by 2020 to 2022 is your connected vehicles. That's the thing that's going to be the key for us, is that connected vehicle infrastructure, because it's not only going to be needed in the short term, it will be needed in the long term. So I'll have more information as it goes on. Okay? Thank you. Enjoy your books.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're down to city manager report.
Plant-Wise is the company that does our invasive species control in Mill Creek Park, and they wanted to do a small controlled burn in the rain gardens this year. They said it would be good for all the plant life to kind of rejuvenate it and kill off the stuff that shouldn't be there. So it's obviously very small areas, so I think we're going to let them try that in the next couple weeks. Dexter shops, that appeal, it's either going to get dismissed by the other side, or they're gonna let us have it, they're gonna file an extension to file the pre-hearing statements, so there's really no action needed on that. Hopefully they end up just dropping it. But I should know that in the next couple weeks. Our appraisal is done, it just needs to be finalized to be submitted, so we don't really have a lot of work to do on that, but hopefully it just ends. The Lions Park sign, we wanted to ask about that. So the Parks Commission's been working on designing the sign, which would be similar to the Peace Park sign. And Justin had asked for quotes from many different vendors, but only got a response from one for $7,700, and the budget for the sign was $8,000. So we just wanted to know if council was comfortable with that, or whether you want us to, try to get some more people to bid. It's not greatly over the $5,000. And we have quite a few sign companies, but it is more of a decorative, like block, it's not just a sign, right? It's more of a landscaping element. So if council's comfortable with that, we can put that on the next agenda for approval.
And that's fine. I'd just like to see the plan or where it's gonna go.
Yeah, he has all that. I just didn't put everything in here because it's not the item, but it's going like basically, what would you say, Justin, like right in front of the gazebo?
Yeah, it would be adjacent to the gazebo, facing the corner of Edison and Ann Arbor.
And Justin met with the Lions about it and Parks Commission, and so. Then he has a rendering. That's about it.
Any feedback on the,
Mr. Michelle?
I had a question on the,
Hold on, sorry.
on the signal timing. My understanding was that the left turn from Ann Arbor onto Baker was going to be allow for unprotected turns.
Right, so that's a phase 2 because we have to change the signal.
Okay.
So this was the only cost was the actual timing change, and then phase 2 would be the actual signal change.
All right.
We need the flashing yellow arrow signal.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
it was just asking if there's any feedback from anybody.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically.
My wife has noticed that it takes longer to cross Ann Arbor now as a pedestrian.
Right, and that's true. It takes 30 seconds longer, or we have to wait 30 seconds more.
If you wait at the intersection, it takes 30 seconds. If you go away from the intersection,
And just cross wherever, yeah. We don't encourage that.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Right.
Which is your wife commenting on, at the intersection?
Mhm.
Other questions for, or any other questions for Courtney, or for any other updates? Okay. Okay, want to move on to my report. We had considerable discussion on fire station at our March 26th workshop, and the discussion was centered on the idea of moving the station to, potentially moving the station to a site on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, commonly called the MAV property, for those of you in the audience, across from Mill Creek Middle School. And while we don't make any decisions at the workshop, one of the things we asked staff to do was to go back and get a proposal from Partners in Architecture, who's been our consultant working with us on our facilities and options, to provide an option and an updated cost estimate for what a fire station and a police substation would look like in combination on that property. And that's in the packet tonight. That's the item that was L2 that is now going to follow L9. So thank you for bringing that back, Courtney, and getting that on the agenda. But I have to say that and we have a full board here. Ms. Fisher wasn't at the workshop. Moving that station down on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, I don't think is a good idea. We are a regional fire department that supports not only our own residents, but that fire department supports 2 other townships, Dexter Township and Webster Township. And you guys can all do this Google exercise yourself. Pick an address and have it go from the current fire station location to that address in Webster Township or Dexter Township, or have it go from the proposed discussion point on Dexter Ann Arbor Road, and it increases the response times. Let me repeat that. It increases the response times to approximately 850 runs, if you will, of the 1,100 in the DAFD service area. The route, when I asked at the workshop, what route would you take to get to Mass Road from there? The chief responded by saying Inverness, at Dexter Ann Arbor Road, to Inverness to 2nd. Okay, now, that may not be the most direct route. Maybe it's Hudson to 3rd, maybe it's Hudson to 4th, maybe it's Edison to 4th, Edison to 2nd. Okay, I didn't drive them all, I didn't measure them all. But none of those routes are good. If you drive them and look at them, the turning radiuses, those intersections are congested. Every one of them coming off of Dexter Ann Arbor Road through those residential subdivisions, or that residential subdivision, commonly the original village, I can't see why that's a good choice. Those streets were not set up for fire trucks to be as primary routes. The majority of the route is downhill. Okay, and anybody who's talked to a firefighter knows that when you're trying to race in a fire truck, full or unfull, loaded or not, the combination of speed, downhill, and braking, and then having to turn sharply, tightly, is not a good combination. And I'm really concerned. The comment was also made by the fire chief at the last meeting that this is gonna put the city's fire station closer to where most of our runs are. And that's incorrect. Now, I don't have that data to show you tonight, but at our next workshop, which will be next meeting, before next council meeting, which is what we talked about at the last meeting, the data shows that there aren't a large amount of runs in that part of the city. Now, I suppose that could change from year to year. Nobody can predict where the runs are. But one thing is for sure, we've had 1,000 runs from our district, in our district, for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And 750, 700 of them, I'm not trying to embellish the number, more than 2/3 of them, you're gonna have to go through the city to get to. It's just not a smart choice. There may be better choices other than where it is. Okay, the motion on the table tonight that's been added talks about building a fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current station. Generically, that could be fine. It could be fine generically. But if we're gonna get specific on this, okay, the other part of this addition is a closed session to include discussion of potential purchase of property. There's been no discussion about purchasing property or interest in that yet. Okay, and just while I'm on my soapbox, the proper way for adding stuff to the agenda so that the citizens understand what it is, we have a rule, a council rule for this. You submit it to the city manager by Monday before 5, the week prior to the council meeting. Okay? We have a rule. We've talked about it. We've all voted on it. We all agreed to it. I get that there's times when we have to add stuff to the agenda, but we have a pattern on this topic of adding stuff late. I would appreciate it if you would think about that and try not to do that. So back to my mayor's report. I wrote so that all of you could read my thoughts. Okay, moving the fire station from its current location to the Dexter City Road site is not in the best interest of the DAFD. And we're a partner in that. And I'd like to ask all of you to remember that as we go forward in the discussions of these things. I did something else that I want you all to know about. I shared these comments with Jeff Harshey, who's the owner of the MAV site. Okay, and I told them that it isn't in the best interest of the city to have a fire station there. The city needs that property in the DDA to be on the tax rolls for commercial development. That's what it was set up for, it was zoned for, it was intended for. So I've kept him abreast of the fact that we've been talking about facility improvements this year 3 times. And generally, maybe not the first 2, but the last 2. But I've communicated to him that I don't think it's in his best interest, and the data would show that. And he thanked me for the call. So I want to be out in front and let you guys all know. Everything we've talked about has been in the public record, so there's no issue with me doing that. But we're heading, if all of this is pushing towards that site on Dexter Harbor Road, I think we're making a bad decision. And I just wanted to share my thoughts with everybody. If anybody has any questions, happy to entertain discussion on this, but nobody can deny that it's gonna add response times. And when we're providing a service that's based upon response, we're looking in the wrong spot. Mr. Cousins?
Well, I have a number of things to say. First of all, the opportunity to provide the motions that were presented this evening basically were generated by this document that you placed in front of us. So there was no way that we could have responded in time to get it on the agenda because this came out on Wednesday and that was past the due date. So for the time there, now, we could have maybe sent this out yesterday or the day before or even today, but time didn't allow that.
But Paul, these are new business items that are different motions, they're unique. Specifically, the second one is a unique motion. It may be in response to what I said, but then you should have it wait till the May meeting. You should give the public a chance to know that a consideration item is being placed on the agenda.
That may be in your opinion. In our opinion, what happens is it seems that there's delay all the time. And so, from your position, sometimes referred to as a bully pulpit by others, that you have the opportunity to put in a newsletter what you want to put in it. You have an opportunity to put in these thoughts here. The six of us have no space or opportunity for that other than this meeting right here and to do what we think is right for the city. And that comes at sometimes a different way.
You could follow the rules though and do it on a Monday and put it in. I mean, you could have, you knew we were gonna have a workshop next meeting. And we talked about last meeting, we'd have one in one of the meetings in April. And I said I'd like it to be the second meeting. Everybody left the meeting very clear. All you had to do was say, I'd like an agenda item, not add it without the citizens knowing.
Well, as I said, this is a response to your comments, and that's what you've asked me to do tonight. You said, does anybody have any thoughts? So that's what I'm doing. So if you'll give me some time to finish, I'll be glad to do that.
Fair enough.
The first statement you have, you said, I have given a lot of thought and time that took place that I'd like to offer the following comments. It almost seems that the rest of us have not given a lot of thought and time into this. We have spent a lot of time doing this. There are people in this audience that know we've spent 20 years. There are people in this audience that knew that were the mayor at that time when we started the discussion on the fire hall. And so it's been a long, long time in this community to deal with this. And so you're not the only one that has had a lot of thought in this process. And I think that my thought processes and the time that I've spent with it either in previous councils or on the facilities committee have had an opportunity to look at the facts and the issues and make a decision. Out of the 6 items that you listed, you do refer to the run times. I understand that. I've had discussion with 2 of the people that are on the fire board, and they understand that as well. These are people that represent other units of government. The DAFD has never, ever interfered or suggested where a fire station is being built. Not in Dexter Township when they build it, not in Webster Township when they're going to build it. They have never interfered with another unit of government in that process and making their determination of where they build the fire hall. And I don't think they're going to involve in this discussion and this decision either. You represent the citizens of the city of Dexter. Yes, you were appointed as a member representing this community to the DAFD. And the DAFD didn't elect you to represent them. The fact of the matter is that by placing a new fire hall in the area that we're talking about services more with a shorter run time in the city than the present fire hall does. It's closer to the schools and it's closer to the industrial park. By placing the sheriff's department with that, it allows for response time to schools at a much shorter time than it is now. And God forbid that we have a disaster at any of our schools, as we've had in other schools in this community, but I would dare to say that I would rather have it there for that space than where it is now. And it says, I know a couple of members seem anxious. I don't know what a couple is, but I always thought that was two. I think there's more than a couple that are anxious to make improvements to our fire station. I concur that we make a few improvements, it says. A few improvements? A few improvements. I disagree with you. We need to find a new space. The site is inadequate what we have. The chief has indicated that. I respect his opinion. I respect the other members of the other units of government by not interfering in our business of where we place our fire station. And I think that we can make a decision to make one that is for the future of Dexter, not short-sighted, that builds a partial station that's going to be there for a short period of time and then we'll have to build a new one someday. And where that is in the city of Dexter, Lord forbid, I don't know. There's one site right now that seems to be a premium, and that is the one on Math, property there. Or if we don't like that one, we can go back to Dan Hoy Road. We own that property.
That's equally as bad.
It's worse in your runtime. I get that. And it may be worse in other areas there. And the only caveat I ever got from any of the other DFD members I talked to was that you can build it anywhere except Dan Hoy. I don't care where you build it. And I think we backed off of Dan Hoy. And so as much as I respect your opinion, I disagree with it 100%.
Fair enough. So we have some, are there any other comments on that portion of my report? Okay. So we have our city manager review workshop coming up on April 11th. It's 2 days from this evening, Wednesday evening. That is at the library, if I remember correctly, 6 o'clock. Okay. And then a week from this Wednesday, we have our third public meeting on the 3045 Broad redevelopment project. We've had really good attendance at the first two. If you haven't been to one, please come. Your input is welcome. The discussion has been good. I think you'd find it a good use of 2 hours.
It's at Mill Creek rather than Creekside.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Mill Creek this time, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I think we've made it a half hour long.
The one down there across from the map site.
One goes across from the map site.
That's a good location for which?
The Broad Street, 3045 Broad, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for me? We will move on to summary of bills and payroll. I'm sorry, consent agenda, which includes the summary for consideration of bills and payroll.
I move to approve the one item listed on the consent agenda, bills and payroll in the amount of $229,276.70.
Motion by Fisher? Second. Second by Smith. All those in favor of approving the item on the consent agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, motion carries. We have no old business this evening, so we are down to new business. Item number 1 is discussion of the economic development strategy Michelle, I'll turn this over to you, if you would, please, to introduce our guests.
Thank you. So as you will recall, we've been working for about the last 9 months on an economic development strategy. We went out for an RFP for proposals, got back some very strong proposals, 4 or 5 of them if I remember, and we selected HWA Analytics and the Bonner Advisory Group. And Luke Hill for HWA Analytics and Luke Bonner from the Bonner Advisory Group are here tonight to give you a quick 10-minute presentation on the strategy. You've got a full copy in your packet and a small handout of the information they're going to go over tonight. So I'll stop talking and give them the chance to make their presentation to you.
Can you just, this is just a summary at the end of everything, but that it doesn't fit in anywhere space in here, it's just a summary?
Yeah, this is what they're going to go over with you tonight. Okay? Kim?
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kim Hill with HWA Analytics, and I've partnered with Luke Bonner. We're here to, in your packet is our final report from this process, and I just want to thank you from the start to say it's really been a pleasure to work with the City of Dexter on developing this economic development strategy plan. There's been some great involvement from the city. We really appreciate the involvement from the mayor, from the city manager, and especially the community development manager, Michelle, who's been involved very closely in this process all the way along. She's been like our third, well, a member of our team. So that's been, it's been great, and it's been a very good process going through. We really do appreciate all the input we've received from you. And we'd also, in absentia, like to thank a couple of partners that helped us on this. Luke and I, HWA and Bonner AG, we'd like to thank our partners, MC, which is based in Moscow, Idaho. They did a lot of the data analytics that are in the report. And I think some of you maybe met one of their representatives, Olivia Metz, and then Debbie Mank also works there. And then Great Lakes Growth Works out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Phil Roos and his partner Stevie Hanna. They were very instrumental in running the all-day consensus session that we had, and some of you attended that. They helped us with the electronic survey and in interpreting some of the results and the like. So just a little bit of background on the report, and then Luke's going to talk about the handout that came in your packet. I'm going to frame it up for him, and then he's going to go on. You know, we've done a number of these studies and helped communities out, strategizing and the like. And we have like a basic, the basic guide that we go through. We want to seek input on some broad-based questions using responses from those to guide our entire strategy planning process. So those broad questions that we're coming in with are: what does the community do well? What does the community want to become? How can the community get there? And what are the available tools and assets that will help the community reach its goals? So we keep asking ourselves that through the process. Our team, you know, when we finally start rolling up our sleeves and getting into this, our team has been impressed throughout this engagement with the high quality of life for residents and businesses in the city of Dexter. When we looked at it real closely, we didn't feel there was anything that was, you know, broken or that had to be immediately fixed. We think the city is starting from a very high baseline comparatively to other cities and communities. Rather, we think there are some aspirational goals that the city can pursue to add to the already high quality of the city. Some of these recommendations that Luke's going to walk through are complex and may take substantial time and effort to accomplish, but all of them are aimed at strengthening the functionality and enjoyment that you already realize here in the city. So during this process, we've heard from the business community and city representatives, compiled economic and demographic data, and held interim meetings with the staff, and Michelle, and I think we've come before council a couple of times, to discuss what we are hearing and finding, all of which helped shape our report and the recommendations that came out of it. Meeting with and surveying the Dexter business community was a great process. Business owners truly care about this city, and they were frank in their praise and in pointing out what could be improved. And we hope we've captured that in the report for you. The city of Dexter, so what we found, the city of Dexter appears to attract young families, is home to many highly educated people with higher than average income levels. This is a result and benefit of Dexter being located in close proximity to the city of Ann Arbor with its emerging tech industry and the University of Michigan, which puts you in a fairly unique place as far as other communities. Just having a major university like that tends to have a big spillover effect, as you all know. Because of these factors, we're proposing the city begin a campaign to market and build itself into a tech and lifestyle hub with a small town feel. The city can do this while retaining and building on the current quality of life, values, and the central character of Dexter. Taking this vision into account, and as a result of the overall process, we've compiled a series of recommendations that align with the input and feedback we received from the city, local businesses, and data analyses. Before I hand it off to Luke, I'd like to offer that we are available for further discussion, brainstorming, and consultation on any facets of this strategic plan. In other words, if questions pop up after we're not engaged in this process with you anymore, feel free to give us a call. You know where to find us. We're happy if you want to, if it's just a question on the phone, you want further explanation on something, you want to do if we can contribute to anything in any way, we're happy to do that. And you certainly know how to get a hold of us, so please feel free. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Luke, and he's going to walk through our recommendations from the report. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
Even though Kim and I are partners on this, we didn't coordinate the sweater blazer look tonight. Just kind of happened. So that was not part of the menu. So again, Kim went over a lot of things clearly that I share the same sentiment on. I think what was coming out to be pretty clear was that everyone generally likes what the city of Dexter has to offer. Right? Great amenities, quality of life, recreation, solid business community, great downtown, great lifestyle type of businesses. So this was more of how do we sort of connect the tissue here with all of these different things to make it stronger? How do we go from point A to point B without really compromising the culture and the character of the community and the way it's been built and the way it is today? So our recommendations are looking at ways that the city can become the connected tissue between all the different assets in the community, from great tech companies to great lifestyle companies to great recreational opportunities. And here's essentially some recommendations that we've come up with to suggest that these are ways to do that. The city has a burgeoning sort of arts and culture asset to it that's really popping up. And I'll point out Encore Theater, I'll point out Northern United Brewing Company, the Dexter Cider Mill, and as a result of that, one of the things that Michelle talked about tonight was another brewer for beer and tea. I'm not sure if you put the beer and tea together. I'm sure it's been done. But that's an example of lifestyle, sort of artisan type of business that's starting to pop up more, that Dexter is a nice home to. So if we take the technology companies that are here in the industrial park and even parts of downtown, in your arts and culture that's starting to grow, our first recommendation is to sort of mash them together in what we're calling an Arts and Tech Council. Arts and Tech Council being really sort of the overarching economic development oversight group, with the staff being the connected tissue of those businesses. They need to be very diverse in their representation, and the council is meant to be very collaborative in nature, and essentially take the suggestions of this economic development strategy and oversee the implementation of that strategy. Some of the things that are important, I think, that the Arts and Tech Council can begin to look at, one of them is marketing. Extremely important that the good work that's going on here in downtown, the companies that are downtown, in the industrial park, the private sector leadership, the public initiatives that are going on, that those need to be articulated in a way that are important to both the companies and residents. And that would help attract more visitors into town. It could certainly help attract more businesses into town. But doing that in a much more meaningful and intentional way. Education is an area that Kim and I, as we're doing more projects like this, there's a conversion more of talent in industry than there ever has been before because of a general lack of talent, general lack of skill set in companies saying, where's my future talent pipeline coming from? There is a high level of interest from the school district to become more engaged with industry, and there's a high level of interest for industry to become more engaged with the school districts. And there's a really nice opportunity to implement some programs, some low-hanging fruit type programs, one of which I'll call, Manufacturing Day, where it really is a matter of coordinating your companies in town to open the doors and let students come in and kind of show and tell fashion. So again, merging industry with the schools is another opportunity. Growing your existing business bases, we're calling them target destination businesses, which I've already mentioned. Encore Theater, Northern United Brewing Company, Dexter Cider Mill, all of which bring people in from outside of the city of Dexter city limits. So one way, clearly, to grow both the city and its tax base and the existing companies is by having more people coming in from out of town and spending their money within the city. We also think that there's a handful of companies that are continuing to grow, obviously accommodating their growth as much as possible, similar to what you have in the past. We think that one suggestion is having a dedicated economic development manager. Michelle, in her community development director position, what we call wearing a lot of hats and managing a lot of projects. The one thing that an economic development manager does is focus on business every single day, live, sleep, breathe business, on the ground, solving problems every day. And that, I think, would be a major benefit to both the business community, but also the city as well. For somebody that's getting involved, that's translating the issues, that's helping and bringing support to companies as they continue to grow and expand. Another point that we would like to make is what we're calling more of like fact versus fiction on infrastructure. So based on what we saw in both surveying and communications, there's a lot of myths, I guess, a lot of rumors, a lot of misinformation on the side of the business community of what the actual infrastructure opportunities are. That goes from everything from water to fiber connectivity. That there are some things that are in place that maybe aren't being communicated as well to the business community, but then there are also opportunities to grow and rectify some of these infrastructure issues. So focusing in on that, and that's more of a direct dialogue between utility companies, including the city, directly to business.
Can you give me an example of that? That our businesses are unaware of?
Yeah, well, it's like fiber, for example. So one of the things that we're uncovering, Comcast has made a fiber expansion, but then some of the businesses say, well, it's not really the high quality fiber that I need. It's only partial fiber, so it's not all the way there that it really should be. So if that's a business subscribing to Comcast and sort of getting what they get and think that that's all they have, and Comcast saying, well, no, it's actually more than that, and there's a divide in the communication between what is actually available and what's being presented as available versus what the companies think that they have or think that they should have access to. We do know there are gaps in fiber. For example, in downtown, there's one business that has paid for his own fiber connection to help boost his business. So that's an example of there's a gap in infrastructure. So how do you actually solve that gap versus is there infrastructure and what's really available and how do we either improve upon it or make sure the business community knows it's available, if that makes sense.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows what's available to them.
Right.
Not that, I can't believe that we wouldn't notify all business interests that what was available to them.
Well, and sometimes it changes, right? So speed of internet changes, there are upgrades that happen all the time. I think that, again, there's not always a communication between business and utility when it comes to that. Energy is another issue. where it's not always reliable, right? I mean, I think the DTE conversation has come up a lot, and a lot of it's been in western Washtenaw County over time, and I know DTE's constantly trying to improve their quality and reliability of power. Those aren't things always that the business community knows about either, right? Either they've had something happen at their plant where there's a blip in service and it shuts down their dynamometer and their data for their test goes out the window, and that's all they see, versus maybe DTE's making lots of improvements that they need to know about. Or the fact that business just needs to be at the table with DTE, telling them exactly what's going on and what they need so that the proper improvements are actually being made.
And you think the local government should facilitate that?
It can, doesn't have to, but a lot of successful examples of solving those issues are, again, I call it the connective tissue, where the city, from an economic development standpoint, can be the one that brings those entities together to help solve some of those issues. And those are successful ways to do it,
Right.
instead of just leaving it by chance. Let's say.
Right. Courtney mentioned last meeting that she's reached out to AT&T to ask where their fiber is. And of course, they ask, well, what address are you interested in? You know, we're looking for a map, right? We're looking to know, how close is it to different places? If you recall, her strategy is she gave them about 25 different addresses all across the city, so that to force them to tell us, you know, where is it, so that we can help them communicate it to the business. How close is it? But it's a little bit of pulling teeth. It sounds like it's a secret, you know. And in this case, it's just funny to me because you think they want to promote fiber, but.
Right.
But anyway, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Cut away.
Cut away.
A few other areas in our, from a recommendation standpoint, is benchmark other communities. And we started to do that in the report. We benchmarked Louisville, Colorado, Middleton, Wisconsin, Fountain Hills, Arizona, and Polk City, Iowa, that we took as similar traits and attributes of the city of Dexter. What are they doing well? What are some things that you should potentially investigate a little bit more of? It's nice, more of like a peer-to-peer thing of, hey, what challenge did you have? We're facing the same thing. Or, hey, you guys did this. You set up a chamber of commerce or something like that, or business committee, and it seems like it's working really well. How can we learn from you? So we have that as a suggestion. And then lastly, we call it business retention expansion. That sort of weaves through a lot of the other things that we've already said. Business retention expansion is real nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling type function of economic development, where you are, again, it's going back to this dedicated economic development manager, where you do have somebody who's 24/7 paying attention to the needs of business, and they are very concerned about the health and well-being of the businesses within the community, and essentially trying to do everything they possibly can to pull resources together, pull partners together like utilities, in a way that would continue to help them grow and thrive within the city. So certainly these recommendations, we have 8 of them. Maybe you implement all 8, maybe you implement 1. It's clearly up to you. It has a lot to do with resources and what you think you could benefit from the most more quickly. But I will also say, in conjunction with Kim, that as some of these things are coming together, you know, we are more than happy to sit down and make suggestions of, this is what you should do to get this part off the ground. This is what you should do in order to bring business together on this particular part of the strategy. You know, we would love to be able to help, you know, you guys move any of these things forward. You know, it's kind of a continuation of helping the strategic plan. So I am more than happy to answer questions. I know Kim is also here as well. So thank you.
Can I add something? Just as Luke was going through his recommendation, a couple of them, the economic development, business retention, and expansion. When I spoke earlier about this sort of overarching tech and lifestyle hub with a small town feel, we think that's a really good opportunity for the city, especially being in the watershed, if you will, of the university. And so, you know, as part of those recommendations, we were we were suggesting that you incentivize some businesses that kind of fall under that lifestyle tech, and incentivize them differentially than just any business, for instance, as a way to, move that along. And then the last thing I wanted to add was the benchmarking communities. The reason we chose those 4, other than them being similar sized in demographics and the like, was all of them are very near a major university. So they're within, 5 to 15 miles of a major university where there is that spillover in residents and incomes and education and the like. So if you have any questions, we're happy to. Or you can always reach us on the phone later, like we said.
I was intrigued by the whole report. I wasn't on the council when it first come in, but this Arts and Tech Council, how many people are you talking about? 5, 10, 7, odd number? And does it include people that are in each one of those areas to be on it? Is the council appointed? Is that the philosophy behind it? I mean, I would have assumed that. But.
There's no rule of thumb
Okay.
to the number of people that a good council makes up, only that it's well representative of that sort of diversity of companies that you have within the community.
Okay. And the branding process, a consistent branding message, we've never had that in this community. We're one of the few communities in Washington County that doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Okay, almost all the rest of them do.
Sure.
I reflect back, we had a hard time even when we decided on a logo once. We finally decided not to fight anymore and not have, one, just the one that we used for the gazebo, okay? But even, and then a branding process that never came about either. So, do you really think that's a really important thing to have a branding message for a community?
Yeah,
I do.
I think so,
Absolutely.
very much. I always say, and I don't know who to attribute this to, I might even be just making this up, but if you're not defining yourself, somebody else is. And it was very clear from the business community that they all feel like something very special is going on here that nobody else knows about. And that is, the types of businesses that you have here, the type of quality of life that you offer to your residents, recreational amenities, even the type of business you have, environment that you have for the tech companies that are here that have grown very nicely and expanded. That message, I think, for the benefit of both the city and the businesses that are here, only help. They only help draw attention to the community. They only help potentially draw more business investment, more residential growth, more visitors. And without that story being told, then you're either perceived as this or somebody doesn't know at all. So we do think that's very important.
Yeah, a good brand would be, you'd have something, you'd throw, somebody'd say, where are you from, or who do you represent if you're traveling on behalf of the city, and you say, from Dexter. They go, where's that? Tell me about it. And so you've got your little tagline. So we took a stab at it, that tech and lifestyle hub with a small town feel. And somebody says, well, tell me more. That sounds intriguing. That sounds like a great place. So Luke said it best. If you're not defining yourself, somebody else is. And
another question about the person that you did, this economic development manager, is I guess the first question is, those other four communities you've identified, do they all have one?
I don't know if they do.
Or do they have
That's
the same question?
So
part-time.
Yeah, but this one we specifically, instead of like looking outside and say, what does everybody else do? We just felt like, the workload and the separation. I think Luke was trying to be real clear that the economic development manager is like sort of the point person for any business that's coming in and saying, I've got this idea, I want to expand, or I want to do something like this. And then that person would be working with you folks at the city to say, to sort of represent that business's best interest, Unless if it's something you want to have in the city, then that person's kind of taking the lead on it, working with the business, talking to them, constantly, trying to work things out, and then being that interface between the city and saying, well, there's these regulations or there's these issues that are in the way. Let's sit down and have a discussion with everybody. So
Yeah, there's, so I served as a full-time economic development manager for the city of Taylor and the city of Sterling Heights from 2000 to 2011, between the two. And there is a very distinct difference between, a planning director and a community development director and an economic development director in terms of what their functions are. As the economic development director, my job and only job was to meet with business every day, and that was it. It was making sure that we're meeting with every business in the community, making sure that we were well established with the real estate brokerage community, with the real estate development community, that we were talking to businesses about coming into the community, that we were carrying that marketing message, and that was like every single day. Not 1 day a week, but 6 days a week, and at nights and weekends. And we only make that recommendation based on kind of where the conversation was coming from, that there is a lot of opportunity amongst the business community to be a little bit tighter, pulled tighter together. There is these opportunities that we're laying out, but it's that person that has to be devoted to that every single day that kind of helps make that stuff happen, if that makes sense. I could never do what Michelle does, for example. It's not part of the skill set that I have.
Well, I was intrigued that you picked United a beer company, and Encore. I support both of those. I like beer and I like music. And things like that. Another one would be coming in, would be good. I think maybe I have one more quick question back here. Let me just check to see here. Oh, you keep mentioning the university. That is obviously the elephant in the county here, but there are 2 or 3 other units of that educational groups that are very, very, and Eastern is a big, and it does a lot with that type of thing that you're talking about there, even more so in some cases than the university. Of course, the community college definitely does, as they relate to all the types of things that relate to these areas here as well. Concordia is a smaller college, but it's there, but I don't think we should dismiss those other institutions, higher education institutions in the process.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, how much would an economic development manager run the city of Dexter? We're not going to have them on salary 24/7, just the 40 hours a week.
No, I understand that. Yeah, I think it's got to fall in line with your current structure for managers and directors. I mean, it shouldn't be any different than that.
On page 4, with respect to grow existing businesses, target destination businesses, there's a statement, assistance should be provided without delay. Out of curiosity, what sort of assistance aside from throwing a sack of cash at these folks?
Assistance doesn't always mean tax incentives. Assistance can mean, a variety of things. Gosh, you put me on the spot here. It wasn't all meant to be financial assistance. It could be any kind of consistent assistance. It could be sort of the ombudsman type of assistance. It could be the connector. It could be almost like somebody who's acting as a project manager for maybe something else that they're doing. The one thing about an economic development manager is they almost are acting as both a business development person and a project manager on behalf of the companies that they serve within the community. So that from assistance and support.
People want to know things like, what's the labor market look like? If I came and located here, what is my labor pool? So the economic developer has a lot of information at their ready, and sometimes businesses are really in a hurry to get things done, so they'll send a proposal out to a handful of communities that they're comparing, and so prompt reply on a list of factors is really pertinent to the discussion, to staying in the competition, if you will, to attract that business.
Are you talking about leads?
needs, yeah.
So that would be something that right now Ann Arbor Stock really helps us with.
Mhm.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
On page 13 and 14, some comparing your fastest growing occupations, it's interesting that you make note on page 14 at the top, only 4 of the top 15 occupations have a median wage under $15. But if you notice that the chart on page 13, 2 of those are at the very top 2 occupation levels. So is there going to be a way for this economic development council to, I don't know if you can even level the field without calling it socialism or communism or minimum $15 an hour. But the numbers alone tell the tale. And I'm sure if I went into incoming and outgoing, I believe a majority of the people that work in these under $15 an hour jobs are actually coming from outside of our community. I'm probably one of the few that don't, just because I happen to live in town. But I'm almost sure everybody who works in the industrial factory come from Grass Lake, Leslie, Jackson, Stockbridge, pretty much like Howell, except for Flint, and all that up there. So I find it.
And that's not uncommon for any business community.
And I understand that. It just stresses me that the people who work here and serve you and do all the menial can't afford to live in town. And I find that disturbing. I see us trending towards a Traverse City or type of thing where none of the laborers can afford to live in town. Or even worse, out west in the Silicon Valley. I'm sure that's an extreme position, but at the same time, I don't want subsidized housing based on percentage of this and that either, like Ann Arbor. That's a big old mess. So I'm looking for some kind of recognition, or I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Looking to have the little old lady who lived here her whole life and had her pension cut and is making $800 a month on her Social Security. I don't want to see her kicked out, you know. But at the same time, her property's too hard to let her sit there, or is it? I don't know. So I don't know if any of this economic stuff can blend in with my concerns there. Maybe it's a pipe dream.
Well, I think it can. I mean, it's up to you and the council here to keep raising those issues. What we did in here was give you data that's not really glossing over the obvious.
But you say that's typical in most areas where there's a lot of industry, most of the, where the higher quality of life is the people that work are actually brought in from the outside area, or?
Yeah, I mean, it'll all look different, but in general, communities have people coming in to work from all over the place. I mean, depending on where you're actually located in the state, people could be driving as far as 50 miles for a job within sort of a job center. You know, we did another project with the city of Sterling Heights, for example, and their largest growing number of positions were retail salespeople as well, similar to this. And you talk to Smart and the Smart bus system, and they say, you know, the largest amount of riders we have are retail workers that are coming from outside of Sterling Heights, you know, 25 miles, and they're hopping on multiple, you know, Smart buses to get up to Sterling Heights to work. And on the flip side of that, also, one of the other biggest job segments that's growing are engineers. And then also is another large population of people that are actually commuting into the city of Sterling Heights every day to work from up to 30, 40 miles away. So it happens. I mean, every community has a workforce that comes in a lot. But we did see, though, is that Dexter actually has a pretty decent sized workforce that actually lives here.
Smart, go out.
But work here too. I mean, it was actually pretty interesting.
Do you have a percentage of how many residents live in town and actually work in town?
630. One of these pages.
Percentage?
Off the top of my head.
Page 55, 630.
There we go.
Out of,
Live here and work here.
out of how many? 2,000?
Out of 4,600.
So let me do some math.
What page was it now? 6.5.
7%.
What page?
Page 16 of the.
Oh, 16. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, it can't be a 65.
Well, you never know. PDF.
It says right here, 92% of all Dexter City residents commute outside the zip code for work.
Yeah.
So that means, that doesn't mean the other 8% are filling jobs in town.
We've got 6,500 people going out of Dexter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For work, 4,100 coming
Coming
in,
in.
and then 630 just
Stay.
are both.
Yep. So obviously, then the same goes for your residents, they're going somewhere else to work too. And it's just how the economy works. It's a lot of moving back and forth.
It's hard with like retail and restaurants and the like in any city. You know, the city demographics might be very, very high. A lot of high income, you know, or high priced housing and the like, but you still gotta have restaurants and the like in your city. So it is tough for, I mean, we see it in Ann Arbor all the time. People, where do they live? But then there's some legacy businesses. You know, you get manufacturing that maybe has been here for a long time. And manufacturing is one of those industries now, just certainly a lot of manufacturing is the number one factor they're looking for are cheap labor. And so, you know, that's not growing, the wage. The wage doesn't go up because if it goes up, then the company either goes out of business or moves their facility somewhere completely different. So what's the answer? I'm not sure.
Well, if I'm being presented with all this information, I'm just looking to glean what I can to serve my own agenda, as always.
Right. No, again, there's a lot of information in there. We don't, you know, you could take.
I just thought it was an
like you just
interesting
said.
point,
Yep.
because it was made note that, you know,
Yep.
4 of the 15 were under the $15 range, but at the same time, it was the number one and 2 job candidates.
Yeah.
Comments? Other council questions? I did have a hand up in the audience, which I'd like to take, but I want to give council members a chance to ask their questions first.
I have
You have a couple more?
just a couple more that I was intrigued that the Park Association was mentioned here, that afforded plenty of spaces for allowing access to local businesses. That's really very important. We talked about the high speed there before. The one that I pointed out to Ray here that it did bother me, and I don't know how to respond to that, was the one that it seemed like there was a concern about the connection to the city and the
31.
Page 31, is that it? Page 31. It says, a major emphasis should be made to improve relations between the city government and the business community. And it seemed like that was highlighted a couple of different times there. And then I'd like to have some discussion within the council or the staff on how that can be improved.
So these were, you know, in this section that you're in, we're kind of encapsulating the comments that we heard during
Yeah, I got
our
that. But when
open-
you hear the comments, and that's good.
Yeah. No, I just want to be clear. It's
They were
not us
given-
that we're saying
right,
it.
They were
No.
given to you, but they were comments that, as I said, not part of the report, but not necessarily anything that you find to be correct or anything. That was interesting. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I've got that. Thank you.
Good, no, you're welcome. Mr. Arbor?
I like the elevator pitch about small town quality of life thing. At what point in your research and your working with communities have you seen it flip, where it's no longer a small town, but it's grown so big, it's got a super identity of its own?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say, first of all, I think everyone through this process, a majority, let's say, was very comfortable with the way the town was today. And the idea of growth came up a handful of times. But I think the folks that were vocal about this felt really good about, you know, there's nothing wrong with staying the same size that we are.
just by becoming a better community doesn't mean you have to grow. Those in growth, meaning more residential, expanding industrial parks, those are sort of underlying in this. They're not specifically pointed out, but I think those types of things are controlled by planning and zoning and master plan, which is another process that's going forward right now. I can't tell you that I've seen something where someone says, hey, let's just stay small, and all of a sudden, boom, they're huge, unintentionally. Although it can happen, but I can't say that I have an experience with something like that with anything that I've worked on.
Okay.
But I could just add that we did hear during the process some comments where people had said, well, maybe we don't want to grow. And then kind of a lot of what we're saying is take care of the businesses that are here, enable them. We keep coming back to the high-speed fiber optic cable and the ability to connect very fast to the internet. This gives your local businesses that opportunity to, market more broadly out to the world and still be here. For instance, the guys at the hardware store who they're in the hardware store and they're everywhere.
He's more than the hardware store.
No, right. But that's the kind of thing. So you can. Again, it goes back to perception. If you like the tagline and that's what you bill yourselves as, it's up to you when it isn't small anymore.
Let me give you another example too of sort of growth opportunity, but not like big sort of real estate growth, pushing at the boundaries type. There are a lot of residents who have a sort of a tech skill set, and based on what we've seen, a lot of those residents are traveling to Ann Arbor for work and further. Duo Security, which is a $1 billion cybersecurity company in Ann Arbor, continues to grow. They are now, and they have workforce distributed all over the country. They have some foreign offices, and now they've opened a Detroit office because they felt like that was the right thing to do. Again, this is a fiber connection issue, but if there were fiber downtown, let's say, and there was a co-working space downtown, that there isn't anything that would prevent, let's say, a group of employees that live in the city of Dexter that work for, let's say, Duo Security, for lack of a better example, that say, you know what, why can't we just work, why don't the 5 of us work from home on Mondays and Fridays?
You want a hotel.
Right, and then all of a sudden you've got 5 employees that work out of a small space downtown because they have a connection to do it. That's growth in a way.
Yeah.
Because instead of those people leaving every day, they're working there, they're bouncing out, grabbing a coffee, they're going to lunch across the street, right? And that could perpetuate into something a little bit bigger, but not something where you're going to have a 5-story building and 400 employees downtown, right? It could be sort of the little one-off, onesie-twosie type of things that would make a big difference, within the downtown.
Thank you for contributing the question. Other comments?
Just have one question, but I don't believe it.
Yes, Sure.
Page 32, I'm seeing a note here, right above the word strength, the last couple of sentences. There was also some concern that current residents of the city are actively seeking to restrict agribusiness. Am I reading that correct?
What page, John, right?
I'm on page 32.
32, they reported 71 of
Right
our.
above the strength thing.
Not one.
I'm concerned about that. I'd like to hear an elaboration on that if you could. There was concern that current residents are actively seeking, and I wouldn't mind if it just said current residents of the area, but it specifically calls out the city.
Yeah.
Now, I understand when you buy a $450,000 house out in the middle of a cornfield, and they're kicking the shit off a shit kicker in the middle of spring, it might not be pretty. But I can't believe anyone in town would actually say this unless I'm totally ignorant, which is a possibility, but highly unlikely.
Well, again, we're in that section where we gleaned it from either comments that came on the survey.
So this was a comment?
Yeah, or it was in the consensus session. So we, at the end of the report, we have the verbatims that people wrote into the survey.
I'll be honest with you, I snuck a look and I know who everybody was that wrote the report.
Yeah,
I could tell the comments by who they were.
It's a very small town.
Yeah. So, yeah, this section, it's not us making these things up, we're just paraphrasing what somebody.
Yeah, I'd like to really,
that's,
I'd like to see that note, or where that was gleaned from. Actively seeking to restrict agribusiness. That's new on me, I've never heard that.
Well, I think the goal tonight was to have.
Yeah,
those
just
that work-
hoping.
No, it's good, to have them formally present this to us. We can have some of those comments researched, and if there's concern over some of the sentences, we can.
I mean, if it is what's said, that's fine.
Yeah, but you want to know from where?
Well, not where, I just want to see the comment.
I understand. Well, we can do that outside this meeting, is what
Absolutely.
my point is.
Yeah, some of the,
We don't have to tie everything up tonight.
I just wanted to make sure that being included in this report was actually a comment made by somebody.
Understood completely, I think it's a good comment.
yeah, when you look at, surveys or even a consensus session, I mean, you really need to look at sort of the majority of what the comments are. I mean, you're always gonna have a survey response that looks very negative, or you're gonna have a couple of comments that somebody makes because it's either their perception of an issue, or maybe they don't know what new is going on that would sort of dispel that rumor or myth. So when you get sort of ones and twos types of things like that, you tend to need to put those in another parking lot sometimes and address them a little bit differently than you do when the majority of the people are saying something completely different.
Yeah, I'm just reading a report here, and I bullet point things that catch my eye.
I think reading that whole paragraph kind of sort of broadly
I
shows you
agree
where
with the whole
those
paragraph.
comments were coming from.
So my thought is that this would be in consideration item to adopt a resolution on a future meeting, if that's okay? Put a few of those questions.
And that's the resolution we have on the first.
Yeah,
page.
sample one is right there. That makes sense to everybody?
And if you've got any additional comments as far as the plan, or thoughts or comments, edits regarding the resolution, please email them to me so that I can coordinate with Luke and Kim on the plan, and then coordinate with Courtney on the resolution.
I'd like to thank both of you and your team for your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. I believe we are down to L3 next. Consideration of the recommendation from Planning Commission for text amendments to the zoning ordinance.
I'll make the motion, listed on page 101, pursuant to the section 2306 criteria for the amendment, that based on the regulations of planning, the city council moves to approve the text amendments to Article 2, definitions, and Article 6,
Article
village
11.
commercial.
My mistake. Article 11.
Article 11?
Yep.
Okay, 11.
It's a mistake on the report. It's
Okay,
not a
Article
mistake
11,
in the
village
public hearing.
commercial zoning district as cited herein, okay?
Okay, motion by Cousins. Second. Second by Smith, thank you both. Council discussion?
Well, it kind of seems we're getting fancy pants using theater with the British gone.
So maybe we can talk about the word theater just for a quick second. Get my pages in there. The gentleman from Dykema that had provided some guidance on the March 15th memo
Yeah.
had suggested temporary theater employment housing.
No. The initial wording was that it would be housing for employees of professional theater where those employees, et cetera, et cetera. But the attorney from Dykema suggested that that the words "and similar entity" be added after the words professional theater. And the question that came from the planning commission was, well, do we really need to put similar entities if we just take the word professional out?
You're missing my,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm okay with the word professional coming out of the definition part,
Okay,
but the title of the definition, he suggested, should be temporary theater employment housing. And we have it shown as housing temporary employment, which then reinforces the definition part, the words that follow, talk about it being specific to theater employees or for employees of theater. I guess the question is, should the bold part be theater housing, comma, temporary employment? Because there's two parts to that down there.
so if I'm understanding you, where we have housing temporary employment, you interpret it that he thinks it should be temporary theater employment housing?
Yes.
No, that's not the way I interpreted it, and that's not the way he meant it. He wanted to make sure that we understood that by having the word professionals in the definition, we were limiting it to just that, and that's why he suggested adding the words or similar entity. He wasn't saying that we should change the title of the definition.
Okay, the word "or" suggests other, but I trust you.
Okay.
Okay.
If you are more comfortable with the way he's got it in here, we certainly can do that. I'm not saying don't do it.
I'm comfortable with the definition. It's the first time I had seen the memo on March 15th. We didn't have this at the last meeting when we talked about that. And then now with the definitions that are proposed, the way I was reading it was that it would say theater housing, comma, temporary employment.
I couldn't put them together either.
But that's how
We can do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that.
I defer to the rest of the group on what the council levels.
So I'm gonna throw this spaghetti out there. What if some of the companies at the tech park wanted to have apprentices out, and they wanted to have what if some of the companies in the tech park wanted to start an apprentice program, and they wanted to have a place for their apprentices to work? To live while they're working there, going through the training. That would require another amendment if we wanted to do that, because this would preclude it unless it was a tech theater doing something there. I'm comfortable with it now. In general, though, I get a little antsy carving out something for one little group that applies to the whole city. But that's all. That's my spaghetti.
No, good comment. We did approve this last meeting, so we need to get the right wording in the, going forward. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to put this in before we approved it, so now that we have it. Okay, further discussion? There's a motion by Cousins, second by Smith to approve the language in Article 2 and 11. As proposed. Seeing no amendments to change and no further discussion, I'm going to call the vote. Everybody okay with that? Please call the vote.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes?
Cousins.
Yes.
Keo.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Motion carries. New business items. L4, consideration of a resolution to approve the Dexter Community Schools' use of the Washtenaw County Recycling Program for schools.
I will move the resolution.
Moved by Michelle's, thank you.
Second.
Second by Knight, thank you.
I do have a question. In some of the paragraphs, it switches between Dexter Community Schools and Dexter Community School District. I was wondering if that was done on purpose, and if there'd be any harm to making it all Dexter Community Schools.
No, we can do that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Knight.
Courtney, could you refresh our memory? Why is it that the schools want to go with this company rather than Waste Management?
Because it's free.
And,
I can answer that simply. Thank you.
and Waste Management won't provide the service for them even if they pay for
So
it.
they won't provide, they were okay with not providing the toter service. The issue with Waste Management is the cardboard dumpster service. Because Waste Management will provide the cardboard dumpster service. And the cardboard dumpster service is provided by a competitor of Waste Management, whereas the recycle toter service is, they don't really consider that a competitor, so that's the issue. So to kind of appease Waste Management by granting an exception and appease the schools by allowing them to participate in this program.
Is this a county program then?
Yeah, Washington County has solid waste
The one we heard about.
plans, yeah, and they implement different ways. And so, and as we also know, the cost of recycling is going up. So this just kind of reduces some of the pass-through costs that, you know, we would have been sending on to them because of the increase in the recycle. I don't know what, you know, in this instance, the county is gonna be responsible for any of that increased cost, so. I don't, my concern is I don't want them thinking that they can switch trash haulers, because I don't agree that that's something that, I mean, I think they should have to follow the ordinance for that, so this has got. But I understand the want to have a free service, I mean, why would we not want them to have that, you know?
Thank you.
Zach?
What was, out of curiosity, their argument that they were not bound by?
Subject to this
Yeah,
ordinance?
it was a
Ordinance.
very broad interstate commerce argument. Yeah, it was like
I
a
love the
federal.
interstate commerce clause.
Yeah, that was what it was,
So
so
clear.
it was very, and when
So
Miller.
only Congress can bind them?
Right. When Miller
Okay.
Canfield, did that research, they didn't do it based on our ordinance, they just did it in general about communities having single hauler programs, which almost every community in Michigan does. So it was very, very broad because, well, honestly, because they chose to use Miller Canfield, who couldn't review our ordinance without me giving the city's permission, because they're our attorney also for certain matters. So they just did it very generally, and it was a very, very general constitutional argument.
Yeah. As long as we don't try to station troops in people's house, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, no quartering.
That's the Fourth Amendment,
Right.
everybody.
Well, this sort of formalizes the exception, is what it is.
Right, so that we can tell Waste Management, and I, you know, it's not, and we'll let advance know that, I mean, the only reason they're being allowed to do that is because
Right.
of this free program. It's not a slippery slope into other things at all.
Hmm.
Thank you for your work on that. Other questions? Okay, seeing none, please call the vote.
Tell,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Michelle's.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. New business item 7L5, consideration of farmer's market operating plan.
I'm going to do that.
I'll support that.
Motion by Fisher, thank you. Second by Cousins, thank you. Questions? Courtney? Or Zach?
This change won't cause extra stress for staff, will it?
No.
Will it
It's
actually
less.
make it easier?
Yes.
Okay. Then just one minor comment I had under 4, operating guidelines for farmers market. Throughout the rest of the document, city staff is capitalized as a proper noun. There, it's city capitalized as lower case. And then the last sentence, it's just staff instead of city staff.
Okay, further questions, comments? Okay, very good. Call the vote. You ready, Ms. Jones?
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's.
Yes?
Knight,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries, thank you. New business item L6, consideration of placement of delinquent utilities on the tax roll. One of our favorite annual things.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Motion by Knight, second by Smith, thank you both. discussion or question needed? Anything to add? Please call the vote. We are required by the charter to do this.
Smith,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. New business item L7, consideration of project submittals for the Watts 2020 to 2023 call for federal aid projects. I believe we had something on the table.
Yeah, there's just a
With
breakdown of the
additional
cost estimate.
information. Thank you for that.
It's slightly different than what's actually in the document because there's an escalator because it's the future.
This worksheet here?
Yeah.
I'm missing the bicycle lane on Van Hoy.
Right.
Wasn't that part?
That's not a federal aid eligible road, or we could have done that.
Is this been moved, you're saying?
It has not been moved or seconded by my notes.
I'll make the
Moved
motion.
by Cousins, thank you, sir.
Get it started.
Second.
Second by Michelle, thank you. Any discussion on the information here? Zach, go ahead, please.
On page 125, make sure I've got this right, is Broad Street and Third actually a part of the border-to-border in there?
Well, that's a good question. So it's a connector route, so the main border-to-border trail route is central. The
Uh-huh.
Broad Street route will be signed as a connector route because it connects to the connecting community stairway
Okay.
at Alpine. So we can add, Sean asked about that too actually, so we can add some language that says that it's on a border-to-border trail connection.
Excellent.
Other questions or comments? Okay, please call the vote, Ms. Jones.
Knight,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Tell, Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries, thank you. New business item L8, consideration of portable toilet bid award to John Sanitation.
I'll make that motion too. Let's get
Thank you,
going.
Mr. Cousins, keep it moving. Moved by Cousins, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Michelle's. Thank you both. Questions? Justin, anything to add?
Questions?
All good? Okay. Oh,
You
yeah.
explain the tiebreaker again because it came out the same.
So it did come out the same, which was a little unusual. The tiebreaker is occasionally we will order additional cleanings. For example, when we have the additional cleaning before the plein air festival. For the vendor that we're not recommending, their minimum requirement is $60 and 4 toilets to clean at one time for a special clean, while John's they'll do it as a one-off for $50.
Thank you.
And we've used John's for a long time, and the purpose of going out to bid wasn't necessarily because of a service issue, it was just because I don't think it had ever been bid before, so, and we've got quite a few toilets, now 7 of them, so.
We wanted to make sure that we're getting a fair price,
Right.
consistent.
Thank you.
Other questions for Justin or Phil? Okay, if we could include the award amount in the motion, I think that's important, we do that,
Well,
right?
we didn't do that sort of on purpose, just because if we change the number of toilets, you know, it's kind of like
Oh.
chemicals, we just
Okay.
kind of approve
Okay.
the per toilet rate.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't think of that.
I don't think we'll be doing that much, but.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so motion by Cousins, second by Michelle's. Any questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Cousins,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. We are down to new business item L9, which was added this evening. Consideration of the motion for the city to build a new fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station. Seeing as how there's no motion, I'll move on to L2.
I can make the motion. I'll make the motion. We build a new fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station. Or
I didn't know how long to wait.
Is that?
I didn't know how long to wait.
Well, I thought somebody else was gonna do it, but I'll be back to do it.
Okay, motion by Cousins. Thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Knight. Okay, discussion? Ms. Knight, you asked for this to be added to the agenda? Anything to-
Yes, we've had this discussion many, many, many times, and I actually think we've made this motion in previous times too, so let's get it on the table again and move forward with this whole project.
Other comments? So,
Can I say one thing?
sure you can.
Paul, you were really calm and really organized in your original presentation as we started out tonight. That to say that this is our response to you, I didn't know you guys were doing this. So I was not part of this response tonight, not something that I was aware of. So I wasn't part of that. And I just wanted to make that clear that I was not part of 6 people that was reacting to the president's comments. That is not the case for me. I can't speak for anyone else. And I will allow for the fact that I was gone. I had 2 health emergencies and I was gone. I thought I had it planned out so I wouldn't miss a meeting, and I did miss 3 in a row. So I'll apologize for that, but I was not part of the group that put the thing together. And I wanted to make that clear.
Now, you never have to apologize for an issue of illness or a family issue.
Well, just that I wasn't informed is what I was saying.
I get that.
Well, this motion is different than the discussion in some ways because it's generally presented.
Because it's what?
It's generally presented. Okay, I have not argued in my comments in the paper, or in the mayor's report, this packet, or in previous sessions, that if the fire station were moved to a similar response location, that would even the playground. Okay, so, you know, this is a very general statement. Motion for the city to build a fire station within the city limits at a location other than the current fire station. So that leaves a whole bunch of places open. Is that right? I mean, the way the wording is presented, just not at the 8140 site is what is implied here, or at least on the very footprint, whatever.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments by Zach?
All throughout, what's on my mind is this vote is here. I tend to always take the longer view just because of my nature. I put a standing seam metal roof on my house. It was a lot more expensive, but it's gonna be there till after I'm dead. And when I'm spending someone else's money on city council, I wanna make sure there's value for it and that we don't have to respend it. We've seen the plan that was prepared for the current fire station to make improvements. 3 million roughly, plus probably $500,000 in architecture engineering. And I still have a lot of concerns with how that would operate and how it would function. And I'd be worried that 5 years later, we start the process again of how can we fit stuff? Where are we gonna do it? And the current station wasn't ever at the top of my list, but because of the longer discussions we've had, I've done a lot of thinking about what would have to happen for that to be a happy site for me. And that list is really, really long. and difficult to accomplish. I agree that if we take something off the tax rolls, we're probably gonna have to put something back on as a balancing. But so that's what I'm thinking, as this is here.
But we were headed down a path. We were headed down a path at the 3 workstations, the 3 workshops, with all of council, where we were going to get the data together before making a decision. We were gonna get a matrix of options together. We were gonna put all the information down. At the last workshop, we discovered that we didn't know what the cost of putting the station was on Dexter Ann Arbor Road. This motion precludes that prior direction. It jumps. It jumps way forward. Okay, when we decided at the end of the year, or maybe it was in early January, to bring this out of committee, to take it out of the facility committee, we were gonna do that in a 7-member information gathering forum. And I don't understand why we're stopping that. We shouldn't make a decision like this until we have the data on the table. And the data should be in the packet, not, I appreciate that this was typed. That helps everybody understand what it is. But this isn't how you bring this forward based upon how we've been working together. The next item on the agenda, which was supposed to be up ahead, outlines a 4 or 5 week process, I forget. Not that many weeks. Why are we not getting the information together like we set out as a team to do and jump into this step? Maybe there are people that want to come talk to us about whether this is a good idea. They wouldn't know. Why wouldn't they know? Because we didn't tell them we're going to vote on it. That's not how we do things here in this town. You want to talk about reputation and all that branding stuff? This is the stuff that people don't like. This is it. The quality of life we have is how we do business. It's our core. We do it openly. Okay, this is not open. I mean, it's at an open meeting, yes, and on any given Monday, 4,000 people could be here, I guess. But the reality is, they know the whole reason we put stuff out in front on an agenda and post it is to allow people to have information to see what's going on. I would say we've failed if we go forward with this motion tonight. It may be what we end up doing. I don't know that. But the goal of making this a wholesome process was to have the 7 of us work together to get a list of options for not only city offices but fire station, and then I admit that I asked about the DPW. But we were going to get those options out in a working group, all of us. And we've tried to make time, 1 meeting, 1 workshop a month to do that. And I respect the discussion that occurred last meeting about a desire, if we need to get something on front of the voters in November. If people are trying to go that direction, that's fine. But let's bring them along with the information. Let's not force a hand or a decision until we have the information out there. This vote can wait. It may be a motion that we should make, but we haven't presented that data yet. When you throw out a number like 3 or 3.5 or +5, I don't think that's the right number. That's not what was out on that piece of paper.
Well, it was
But
it was 2.8, and it did include architecture engineering.
But whatever the number is, it should be next to option A or option B, whatever you want to call that one. We should put those facts together and let it be part of something that gets brought up out of our combined. I'm going to vote no on this because that's now the direction that we've worked together. You could have done this in January, if that's what you want to jump to. We've tried to create some synergy in how we get to where we are. And I don't understand what the rush is. We have time. Let's get the information and properly put it in the packet so that we're not criticized for that. Fisher?
I don't know if this fits in where you left off, but one of the things I've really been struggling with is that the idea of office facilities, fire, hall, place for the police have gotten to be so intertwined in my mind, I am having a really hard time sorting that out. So when I get to this point, what really stymies me on voting for this is that you're the only one who had the, whatever it took to actually say in this small town, well, what's the value of the fire hall? What about getting rid of it? And we never followed up on that. We never.
Actually, that's me.
All right, well, you're the only person then that had the whatever to bring that up. And I think that we haven't done that. So I don't know if I have that to balance against something else. I also know that I have a bargaining chip and that I own some property down on 3045 Broad. And that plan has not been laid out. We don't know exactly how that's going to look. But it was one time said, I'll get in trouble because I'll say it's the wrong staff person, so I'll say it was a staff person. I think it was Justin. That said, and I thought he was nuts at the time. He said, well, you know, maybe you'd like to think about city offices down in that area. And then I got to thinking about that, and then I got into a meeting with the Norfolk representatives who said, this is a pretty good way of making a comment, a real strong statement to your community that you're willing to put your offices there because that's where you believe your commercial district should go. I also spoke with a staff member, who I'm not going to mention their name, who said one of their concerns is that we will get going so hot and heavy on taking care of the fire issue that once again, the facilities issue, we'll spend X amount of dollars that it will take to do this, and that we once again will sweep that piece of facilities, or the office facilities piece, under the rug. I think they do a beautiful job, and our staff does a beautiful job of providing services to the community and to us, given where they live every day. However, it is bad. And every time I go there to have a meeting, and I just had a meeting with Arts Culture and the president to talk about a couple of arts culture issues, and I said, well, we could meet in the village offices, and then I thought, I'm sorry I said that, but the fact of the matter is where else would we meet? And so I just think that it's so intertwined, and this right here just feels to me like it's forcing us not to do something that I'm afraid to vote for that because I'm not sure that I don't want to know what happens to 8140. Not necessarily that I have to go there with a fire hall, but I'd kind of like to know, have we looked at a total plan? It's just really hard for me. That's all I have to say.
Ms. May?
As far as the information, there's been plenty of information out there about everything. I mean, we have binders this thick that, partners and architects have prepared for us with numerous plans and numerous dollar figures, and the dollar figure is not going down at all.
Right.
And we all know that.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but I just lost my
Thick binder.
train of thought.
Thick
Sorry.
binder, lots of information.
It'll come back.
I have to think about that for a minute.
But Julie, why wouldn't we follow through on what we set out to do when we decided to?
Why didn't
have
we
these
follow
workshops?
through when we took the action before taking 8140 off the ballot, off the plate? And we've had motions to do that in the past.
Because we decided to go through a process, a public workshop, to look at all of it holistically and have all the information. We decided that this seven-member council decided to do that.
2 years ago.
No, just in January we decided to do this.
2 years ago, we had that.
I'm ready to move forward. I really think I'm ready to move forward.
This is a bad precedent for how we do it. And 2 years ago, I'll remind you that the discussion about moving forward came up the same way. It was not on the agenda either, and it was presented by a council member that's not at this table at the part of the approval of the agenda. Every time it's secretive when something's done on this, and it's not a good pattern.
I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, good, I'm ready. I got both.
Well, and Donna, added to it that we're not only talking about the fire hall and the offices, but now we've also added a third thing, the DPW.
And all those dollars
expansion.
compete.
Right, but we could talk forever. We've got to take some action on some of these things. I mean, there's always something more we could add. Always something more. We've got to take some action.
I'd be okay, you know, if the people who have made the motion, you know, if they felt the willingness to consider not voting on it tonight, but asking that be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Will we have had a workshop in between there?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right before the next meeting.
Okay.
But we're not gonna have the
I-
information from back from Partners in Architecture until the
I
end of
agree.
May.
Right.
I didn't mean to interrupt, I was just trying to figure out
No.
the timing. Yeah.
Well, I'll just ask, are you willing to postpone it?
I'm not.
Okay. Are you?
No.
You second, okay. So the motion on the table is as presented. Further discussion?
I was the one who made the motion, so I'll like to speak. I have to come to the point where the delays to me are costing this city money. I think this decision could have been made 2 years ago. And we had the information then, the binders were there. You know, the run times were there. I don't know what other information that we're going to need other than that we have now decided that we're going to ask to have a site picked and that it will be for a city hall or a fire hall and a police station together, okay? I will tell you right now, the priority of me has always been the police station, but I do not intend to wait a year, 6 months, even 6 months. In fact, I would like to make it very soon of how we will deal with the city offices and deal with those. This trading of one for the other has to have a lot of discussion as well. You know, we have a prime site down there that we can rework to a city hall. If we want to go to the DAPCO site, the dollars are the same, no matter where you build one space or the other. The amount of money that you're going to take off the tax roll is the same, one way or the other. You're either not going to build it at a site that we are trying to develop down there, or you're going to build it at a site that we already own at 8140. I don't agree with the other sites that have been chosen, whether it's Monument Park building or whether it's the old IGA. Those are not good sites and appropriate sites for City Hall, in my opinion. If we want to just do something partially, we could have done that years ago. I'm not going to get into that again. But we need to make this decision to move forward. And I guess I really don't understand what you said, Sean, when you talked to Jeff. Did you tell him that?
It's not in the best interest of the Dexter community for this fire station to go on the MAV site.
So you're basically
Because
saying we have,
the only thing that matters to our residents is response time, and you guys are ignoring it. You're ignoring the #1 criteria, as is our chief, which is amazing to me.
response time.
Response time is everything. It should be our #1 criteria. The facility committee danced around it. This board is dancing around it.
I'm not
It's
dancing around it.
Well, wait, you know what? What you were trying to, last meeting, what I thought we were trying to do was get a price or an approximate dollar amount for that site, because it looked like there might be 4 people on this board that want to put something before the voters to vote for some amount of money, which is a question mark today, because we don't know what it is.
Correct.
Right? That was what I gleaned. Okay, we don't make decisions in the workshop, but that was the direction that I thought we might be heading, and the reason why item L2 was on the table tonight.
Correct, I agree.
Okay?
Okay, so
So this motion doesn't need to be made. This motion does not need to be made. What we need is to get the data, and then if there are 4 people that want to put that message before the voters, fine, let them choose lower run times. But it's funny, they're going to be choosing it. The actions we do that affect our neighbors. I mean,
That's-
wait and look at the data. The runs are not down in the southeastern portion of the city. That's not where the runs are. And 800 runs, sorry, wrong number, 700 runs are gonna have to cross the entire community to get to the two communities that we're partnered with. Now, maybe the other communities didn't ask us where should they build their fire station. Okay, frankly, I'm not offended by that. They picked the center of their community. Pretty logical, especially given they had none. Well, I'm sorry, no offense to you, John, if that's, okay, plus they had land there. Okay, the thing we don't have, the townships, one township, Dexter Township, struggled for years to find the right spot. I'm not even sure if they found it, but they took the second spot that they wanted. But response times should be what we're talking about. Maybe there's another site within the window of the, I call it the Dexter Pinckney and Central Mass arc, or portion of the pie. We should be finding a site that offers a similar response time, not worsening it, making it worse.
In the city?
Yes.
Well, I'll be glad to take a look at that, but we haven't found that I've ever been able to discover.
Well, maybe we need to put our money where our mouth is and go aggressively find it. But that should be, if we're really doing something for the communities as a whole, and then the partnership that we entered into, response time is important.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay, well, this direction ignores that.
It does not. It says it changes. But the fact of the matter is, when they, 1956, put that fire station at that place, they made that decision. If you decide to move that fire station anywhere, it changes the response times.
Paul, not as drastically as what you're doing. If you put it around the corner, it's 3 seconds. Where you're adding 2 minutes to 67% or more of the runs, including runs in the city.
Well, the runs in the city, it took to some places, but not to others. In fact, it covers more than the one where the fire station is
The
now.
majority of the runs that DAFD will respond to will have longer response times because of this.
Not in the city.
You're just
Shorter times in the city. That's who I was elected by, the people of the city, Sean, and so are you. And you were appointed to that committee on
The data will show that. The data will show that's not true. The number of runs that are responded to are further away. I mean, I realize the motion's on the table, but this is out of place. It's not what we've been doing as a team for the last 3 workshops.
Well, I could respond to that, and as I indicated to you, I try to be calm, is that the thing that prompted this was your statements within the mayor's comments.
Well, I have a right to share those with
Sure
everybody.
you do, but that's the point. You have a right to share that, and you do share that, and we responded because of that, because it was contrary to what we believed what the right thing to do for the city, to build a new fire station.
So you all got together and decided that's what you should do?
No, we didn't get together.
Well,
I haven't met with any of them.
How many were involved in putting this together? Yeah.
I thought, you want to know how many were? I talked to Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith wrote this. If that's what you need to know.
Mr. Smith wrote it and Mrs. Knight passed it out. And
She passed it out this evening.
I'm just saying, it's not working together, guys. It's not how we should be doing this.
Well, it's certainly not working together in my opinion, Sean. If you go to Jeff and tell him what you said, that's not working together at all. You have a responsibility that's bigger than that to let us know that.
I did let you know that.
Yeah, after the fact.
Well, I still have a right to talk to him and tell him what's going on.
Well, I guess I do too.
There's nothing wrong with me talking with any property owner or business owner about stuff.
There's
There's been a lot of them there's a lot of people downtown that think the fire station should stay downtown. Our historic downtown, that conveniently got missed in everybody's soliloquy.
I can add it in, no, I won't, but I could. So I just wanted to again say, if it were an easy decision, it would have been done 20 years ago. It's complex because there's not a lot of places, and because there are competing interests between the fire area and the city. There's a concept in law, especially with relation to land use planning control laws, the common man. And the idea with that is you get a group of people together, and between the group you'll find kind of the average. And that's what we're doing here today. It's not always easy 7-0 votes. We have competing interests. As Councilmember Cousins has said, his focus is on run times and service to the city of Dexter. As Mayor Keough has said, he's concerned with the broader impact on run times for the entire district. And so, you know, we're between the 7 of us, we're going to balance out, figure out where that balance lands. In my profession, process and sunshine is very important. If I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, I can violate the Constitution pretty easily with screwing up due process or equal protection. So I do have concerns about things just popping up on agendas. However, I'm not as uncomfortable because we've had so many workshops. It has been in the public view, and people aren't coming in to the workshops with pitchforks and torches. I'm comfortable with this. I've talked with a lot of folks. I can rest easy with the process, that people have been informed about the process, and know that it's a tough decision, and I respect everyone for their opinions and what they're bringing to the table. And sorry for all the cough. This is actually a week of me improving.
No problem, hope you get better.
That's all the talking I can do.
I've got your back.
Yeah. Paul talked about the mayor's view that you put into your report. And when I read it, I wondered why, you know, that just didn't come directly to the council members, sharing as part of the work session, you know, in preparing for the next work session. Rather than putting it in the packet that's out available for the public, and you're presenting this picture of, you know, all the reasons why we shouldn't be doing something. And Paul mentioned before, you referred to a couple of council members that, you know, didn't want to, you know, stay at 8140. And for a long time, I made it known, you know, I mean, it was one of the reasons we bought the property on Dan Hoy, was to seek a, you know, location for a new fire station. Yeah. Previous village councils have passed motions that 8140 should not be the site for a fire station going forward. You know, this is a topic that, you know, we've discussed many times, you know, with, you know, citizens in our audience. I mean, you know, we've had work sessions to where some of the concepts that were developed were presented, and David went through the deficiencies in the current fire station and village offices at that time. Yeah. Coming out of the last work session, yeah, I know, Donna, you weren't there, but it was pretty obvious out of that there was 4 of us in there that, you know, felt it was time to go ahead and start getting things moving. You know, to me, you know, when Paul told me that he wanted to put a motion out there tonight. I said, well, take a look at, how do we word this? And I thought wording it in general, but consistent with the things that have been expressed in the work sessions. That, we want a new fire station, we don't want to stay at 8140. It just seemed time to put that back on paper and in effect that says, yes, we concur with the decision that had been made previously. We just want to reinforce that. And then we set about continuing to look at what's there, what our options are. There's no perfect site in town. And a lot of the sites have shortcomings, but they're, every site, even the current site, has pros and cons about it. I think the location of the fire station should be what works best for the city. It's our taxpayers that are gonna pay for this station. And I think we owe them the effort to come up with the best solution for our city residents. And yes, it'll be used to continue to service the other areas within the DAFD. But the townships make their decision where they're gonna put their station. I think we decide where we're gonna put ours. And, I just feel that, the only option we're saying is that we don't want to go to 8140. And, let's take a look at these others. If it means, getting the concepts and stuff done by, Partners in Architecture for the MAB property, that's good information. Let's, I'm not against pursuing that. But, I'm fine with making that decision, not to plan on going to 8140 for a new station or a renovated station. Like I said, it's something very early coming onto the council. That was, one of my goals over that time was we needed to start planning for a new station. As I knew the station was getting older, and I talked to, some of the firemen, I talked to other people about, some of the deficiencies of the station. It's been a good place for a long period of time, but the plan for the future, so started that, almost, next year it'll be 10 years, just, looking back to when we bought the, other property, and it's time to put it back down on paper that, this is council's intent.
Jim, if you could spend the same amount of money, wouldn't you rather have better response times?
Response times isn't the only thing. I know that's your thing, but I factor response times in part of it.
But if you could spend the same amount of money and address the deficiencies, wouldn't you choose response times? This is a softball.
I look at, there's a lot of factors that go in, so.
Wow.
I mean, I would compare and, you know,
Hey, you know what? Put it in front of the voters. They'll have a field day with this. Just give them all the facts, like we said we were gonna. Which meant a matrix of comparisons.
Maybe the chief had asked, I'd like to ask the chief to be able to speak. We had a comment by you that you don't agree with him, maybe he wants to explain why he.
Is council done talking?
I only had one other thing to say.
Okay.
I'm barely breathing, so yeah, I can't talk anymore.
Why don't you make it?
Oh.
I think we need to go home.
The delays, the continued delays, costing us money all the time. I could make an argument that by the delay of 2 years, that I believe that this decision could have been made where we are right now. It's cost us close to $500,000 to $1 million just in extra funds and what the bond issue could be in the future.
It's all speculative.
Well, it is speculative, but that's what David told us a long time ago, what the cost of living or cost of construction was going up.
Paul, we didn't have a site. We didn't have the property. We don't even own the property we're talking about. So I don't know how you even talk about going forward. We tried to buy it, you didn't sell it to us. Maybe it could have been done 2 years ago. We don't have a piece of property to do it. Am I missing something?
No, almost, the only thing we're missing is the opportunity to move forward. And this tonight may be the one we get the chance to do that. I'm finished, I'll let the,
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I feel that my integrity's been questioned here regarding the data that I gave to you guys. I have prided myself and worked very hard to give you guys accurate information, and the run data being presented or being debated back and forth, the data's there that supports the better run times or at least equal run times in the map site. I've got an additional document here that breaks the city down into sectors, and when we show the various areas of where the runs are, our goal, our mandate in the fire service is that we need to be able to make a 4-minute response time 90% of the time. Right? That's what we judge ourselves against. The biggest share of the city and the larger number of runs occur on the southeast end of the city. The documents show it. Right? It's very clear. Now, I'm not saying the MAV site is the perfect site. Right? By any means, it's not the perfect site. But you don't have a perfect site. If you don't buy this property, you're not going to have anything left. And you think you have a bad board rep now, or this might be a jump to conclusion? What happens if you don't get this site, you don't find another site to buy, and then you actually have to take one through eminent domain? You just don't have a lot of choices right now. And the comments regarding the center of the city, or where do you put a fire station, the center? Is that the center geographically? Population-based, run-based, employee-based? There's all kinds of centers that we look at when we do fire station studies. Now, I've tried to give you accurate information. I've tried to provide everything that I can to the best of my knowledge, and I've got the pedigree to show that I am speaking intelligently. I am a fire engineer. I'm not going to bring bad information to you folks here, regardless of what some may think. I've presented options. I've presented some costs, some numbers, some of the things that we do in the fire service so that you can make an intelligent decision. And it's a group decision. But I really didn't appreciate being targeted here and saying that I'm giving inaccurate information. I hope you guys can come to a decision, because you're right, Paul, every year that you delay costs you money. Webster Township, you guys just went through this. I talked about it at the last meeting. Fire cost of building fire stations went up 5 to 10% last year. They made 2% on their money in the bank. Every day you delay a decision creates a problem. And I'm not so sure that what I'm seeing here tonight, I'm not a citizen or resident of Dexter, the city. I'm not an employee of the city. but I am kind of disturbed at the manner that this is all taken, and the information that Mayor, you put in here was stuff that I don't think anybody saw coming. Now my concern is that will the site disappear before you get an opportunity to really decide if you want it or not? I mean, you just don't have any other sites available. I don't know how else to put that out there, right? And even that's not the best site. I'd like it to be a little bit bigger. Were other sites considered? I considered and talked about every site that was presented to me. Jim brought me one today that we discussed, good, bad, and indifferent. But the fact is, you need to do something. I keep my stuff factual. I ask that you respect that. And if you want information, I'll give it to you. It'll be accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from council? Okay, please call the vote.
Knight,
Yes.
Fisher,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Tell,
No.
Michelle's,
That's a yes.
Keo.
No. Okay, motion carries 4-3. New business item L2 has been moved down to follow L9.
I'll make a motion that we approve the scope for not to exceed 4250.
Motion by Smith. Thank you.
Second.
Second by Michelle's. Thank you. Questions for staff? No questions? So Courtney, you think he's gonna have this within 5 weeks?
Yeah, I'll try to have him, see if he can have it done for sure by the second meeting in May.
Okay.
So that would need to be done by the Wednesday before, so. hopefully
That'd be great.
council will shoot for
Tell
it.
him thanks for accelerating that.
Yeah. I think he'd be okay with that.
Other questions? Okay, please call the vote. Ms. Jones?
Tell,
No.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes, I'd like to know what the cost of the unit's gonna be.
I make a motion that we eliminate the closed session.
Second.
Motion by Smith, second by Michelle's. Change the agenda to remove item O. Is there discussion?
Is that O is the first one or O is the second one?
O was
The first one was
changed to be the purchase of, to closed session for discussion of purchase of property recall.
And you
And
asking that be removed, Jim?
Asking that be removed,
Purchase
second.
property.
Seconded by Michelle.
Do we have discussion on that, or is that?
Yeah, we did discuss the motion, sure.
Now, why would we do that?
One wasn't advertised, would be a good reason. I've said that already.
I feel we have a work session coming up on before the next meeting, and, you know, we can put in a request to have a closed session at the end of that meeting instead.
If you want that, I would just tell the city manager now that you'd like that on the agenda, and then it'll be on the agenda. And then whatever, I mean, if we wait till Monday at the work session, nobody's gonna see it again.
Okay.
I'll wait. I mean, I'll wait. Any other comments on the proposed motion to eliminate the closed session for this evening? Okay, seeing none, please call the vote.
Fisher,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Knight,
No.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. And motion carries. Okay, so we are down to, if I have everything correct, non-arranged for, oh, yes. Wait a minute. Did I miss- Oh, yeah, council comments. Thank you. I flipped too quickly. Council comments, starting with Michelle's, please.
Sorry for the coughing. The NyQuil finally kicked out. But I am getting better, believe it or not. I would like to have on the agenda, either the next meeting or the meeting after that, as space allows, discussion of Housing Commission. I know we've done it at goal setting. I'd like to have something here for 5 or 10 minutes, and if you let me know which agenda it goes on, I'll pull some spaghetti up for the packet for everyone to discuss.
Yeah, let me take a look.
Yeah. And the difference between spaghetti and pennies is spaghetti is either for brainstorming or playing devil's advocate, whereas pennies are down to the brass tacks, the final stuff. So there is a distinction there.
Good. Thank you for explaining the vernacular.
Yes. With that, I'm set, thank you.
Okay, great. Knight?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Smith? No. Ms. Jones, anything to add? Or did you miss?
The only thing I was gonna, Michelle, would you have Kurt, a look at the trees on Inverness and 4th Street? The one is, if it isn't dead, it's getting there. It's by the parking lot, and I think it's in the city park.
I'm sorry, trees where?
You could argue.
No, it's on, and they're by the road as you come around from Inverness to 4th Street. By our church parking lot.
Give her an address.
It is, it's a parking lot.
Oh, St. Andrews?
The church address is in Everett Street, doesn't
And are
help
you
either.
talking about the parking lot that is the Historic Society parking lot?
No, it's both the church one, but yeah, it's the same.
Ms. Fisher?
I'm not too happy about the one-day trash pickup, and I'm adjusting nicely. I'm working on it. Yeah, it's just like too much for me, actually. Keeping all that trash over the weekend is just awful. I like an hour on Friday and have a fresh weekend.
And when company comes over, the trash is
Yeah,
empty, it's like,
I'm
"Nope, we don't have
trying
the
to
trash."
adjust. I'm really trying to adjust, and I'm not spreading my feelings around. I'm keeping it.
Perhaps I should
Till
have
now.
done another garbage can.
With wheels and all that on it, maybe.
I think they're on sale.
All right.
There you go, Ray.
Okay.
I'll tell.
Mr. Dell, we'll let you follow that.
Right.
No, thank you.
Mr. Cousins?
I have nothing to do with price or anything else, so thank you.
Okay. We're on to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this evening on any topic?
We've heard a lot.
Okay. Should come more often.
Oh.
Motion for adjournment, please. So moved by Smith, second by Knight. Thank you both. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Last
You're the
weekend,
first one to say it.
Right, everybody else is all-
John, did you learn anything about meetings tonight?
You get sweaty.
More than one way to skin a cat.
Yes.
You don't want to watch when they make sauce.